Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching Sit Down. Look who's here. Suzanne Summers, brand new book, New Way to Age. Really nice to meet you.
You too.
How's everything going?
It's probably the happiest time of my life.
That's awesome.
And I thought at this stage of my life that you'd start having, longings for what was. I don't. I'm like really realizing that there's another chapter, probably many more after this. And I thought when I turned 73 that I would be old. And I'm chronologically old, but I'm not old. And I believe it's because the way I've been taking care of myself. I've really thought of this as a Maserati, and I feed it right and put the highest,
fine-tune it,
right?
The
highest octane fuel I can put in there, and it pays off.
Definitely. So you're playing a little hurt. You got your fractured hip here. Like, if I knew a 73-year-old woman with a fractured hip, she'd probably still be in bed. But you're 7 weeks gone from it.
In heels.
Yeah.
In heels.
So how are you managing with that right now?
It's been quite a lesson, because fracture. It would have been better if I broke my hip, because then you replace it and it heals pretty fast. From what I hear, I'm sure it's no walk in the park. A fracture, when he finished the surgery, and I stayed in the hospital 6 days, and I thought, why am I staying here so long? Although, to be in the hospital in Palm Springs, I honestly kind of didn't want to go home.
What was that situation like?
Well, there are a lot of rich old people in Palm Springs, and they all give a lot of money to the hospital. My hospital room had, it was like the Four Seasons Hotel. It had a conference table and an outer suite, and then the inner suite, and then they moved a bed for my husband, just like mine, alongside mine. And
you were hooked up.
The chef came in with the organic menu, and what do you want to eat? And could you make me this? Sure, whatever you want. And I'm thinking, this is nice. I like it here.
Not a bad deal. A little better than home, maybe.
Yeah, really, when I went home, I thought, oh, I'm going to have to get all the meals up to my room and the stairs.
I got to do it myself now. I got to get some people involved here.
Exactly. So, but anyway, when I left the hospital, he said, here's the deal. You go home, you get into bed, and you don't move for 6 weeks. I said, 6 weeks? He said, 6 weeks. He said, it's a stress fracture. We put a stabilizing rod in there. You've got to stay still. So as an active person and an athlete, and someone who likes to swim every day and do yoga every other day and hike, and I've got hiking trails on my property, I had to submit. This is it. This is what it is. And then I got so grateful for the health I've always had and the agility I've always had, and that I was able to do Dancing with the Stars at 70. And I just always thought I could do anything. So it's humbling.
Yeah.
It's been humbling.
Yeah, I mean, you've had cancer, you've had a little bit of everything along the way, but that hasn't stopped you. So what have been the keys in continuing to maintain that health and build things out for you?
I think my advantage is I am a critical thinker. And so when you have cancer and you're presented with standard of care, which would be chemical poisoning, I don't know. I have not seen it working for me. I know some people, I know there are 3 kinds of cancer that if chemo is going to work, it does. It's testicular, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and childhood leukemia. After that, I always say to people who write me, I never give advice, ever. I never use the word should, but I say, if you're considering having that chemo, just ask this one question of your doctor. If I take this, will it cure me? And they'll have to say no. Because if there was a cure to cancer, they'd be going, all you have to do is have a little chemo, it'll all be fine.
Yeah.
Nobody feels that way. So when I was presented with that, I said, I can't do that. And I got a lot of scare tactics, like, well, you should think about getting your things in order kind of statements. And so then you have to take a deep breath. But what I write about in this book and all my books is you're the contractor of your body. And you hire your subcontractors. These are professionals you hire to take care of your different parts of your body. But you got to inform yourself as much as you possibly can so that you can make informed decisions and do critical thinking on yourself. So I've had a lot of cancer. The one that's most famous is this breast.
Right, you got the whole breast reconstructed.
I got it
basically,
regrown. It's like it's me. It's incredible. In fact, if you saw that picture of me in my birthday suit
at 73. I saw that one. Loved it.
Thank you. But this breast was the regrown one. It looks just like the other one. It's real and it's soft and has feeling, and it's me. That's what I wanted. When I was presented with implants, I thought, I just feel something better is going to come up. And then I heard about this Japanese doctor, Kotaro Yoshimura, at the University of Tokyo, and he had regrown successfully the breasts of over 400 Japanese women. So I cold called him, and he knew who I was, and he was aware of my work, and so we developed a friendship. And I was able to convince him to come over and teach Dr. Aronowitz at Cedars-Sinai the technique. And then I applied for an IRB, which qualified me for a clinical trial. It took 3 years to get that, and the day it came through, we went, and we did it. And they removed the fat from my stomach. They then took the stem cells out of that fat, discarded the weak ones, kept the strong ones, put the strong ones back into this congealed fat, and like with a turkey baster, injected into this breast until it was the same size as the other one. And then for about a year, I felt like electrical zippers and on the underside, and that was the blood vessels growing. It's kind of phenomenal.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Really. So I didn't even think of it when I posted that picture, but I thought, well, there's that breast.
Yeah.
That looks nice.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing how far technology's come. Like, one of the things you mentioned in the book is just life expectancy. Like, when you were first growing up, it was in the 60s. And now we're in the 70s and 80s. Like, what do you think is most profound in terms of how technology's advanced and also how life expectancy's gone up?
Well, technology and surgery have extended life. What hasn't happened is putting focus on quality of life. What I write about is quality of life. I want the extended life. I want to live longer. I'm enjoying my life so much that I'd like to get into my hundreds.
You said 110 in the book, right?
I feel very comfortable saying 110, and I think it's very plausible and feasible. I want to get there with my brain and with strong bones. If you don't have strong bones, you're all crippled up. That's no fun. Now you're frail and decrepit. And you don't want to not be of it. Nothing greater than being around. There are a lot of 90-year-olds around now who are really sharp. There are a lot of 60-year-olds who can't remember their last name. Yeah. So much of that has to do with hormone replacement, your memory. The estrogen feeds your brain. And, you know, like one of the doctors told me that if a woman has a headache, take some of your estrogen cream and put it right at your temple so it gets, you know, close to the brain. But the whole thing, that's the first game changer, is hormones for men and women. Yeah. For men and women.
You mentioned testosterone and estrogen in the book.
Yeah. And I'll tell you all about your prostate in a minute.
Yeah, can't wait to hear about that.
But it's so uplifting, it's so exciting. What's that? Let me just finish with women. When we're young and we make all this estrogen, if estrogen was carcinogenic, we'd all have cancer, right? It's when we stop being reproductive, or reproductive gets iffy, and women have, this is make you uncomfortable, but women have signs like they miss a period or break through bleeding or things like that. And they talk about it like it's normal, but it's not normal, it's a language. It's the body going, something's, the balance is off now. That's dangerous because estrogen is carcinogenic, but 15 days, and we make it every day of the month, but 15 days of the month we make progesterone. That is anti-carcinogenic. Nature is perfect. So just when we hit the 12th day, and I take my hormones in a cycle, first 3 days of the month, the lowest amount of estrogen, then it raises in increments over the next 3 days, and by the 12th day, I take the most estrogen I'm going to take all month. It coincides with the full moon.
So how much is that?
8 milligrams for me, but that's what I need, which would be different from, you know, that woman out there. But it goes back to paleo times. In paleo times, there was no light. But on the 12th day of the month, there was a lot of light because it was a full moon. And guess what? Women cycle to the lunar calendar, so on the 12th day, they're making the most estrogen they will make all month, which makes them the horniest on the 12th day. And our hormones are all about perpetuating the species. So either she made a baby that night, and then the next day it plummets to the progesterone starts pouring. Either she made a baby, or it sloughs off, she gets a period, and then we start the whole process all over again. So today, in today's world, taking hormones, try to mimic nature as closely as possible. So I do the lunar calendar, and the 12th day is fun.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting day. I'm sure your husband's pretty pumped about the 12th day also.
Yeah, we have usually have tequila on a full moon night at Big Al's Bar, which is the bar at our house. And but it's interesting what nature has set up, you know, that you have a natural inkling, a natural drive with when you are making the most amount of estrogen, which is how you can get pregnant. I'm not going to get pregnant anymore, so I don't even have to worry.
You're good.
I can drink tequila,
You're in the clear.
full moon, it's all fun, yeah.
Well,
so now, do you want to know about your prostate?
Yeah, let's hear about my prostate here. Yeah, give me the details.
Because I think it's tragic when they remove a man's prostate, because now you're not the guy you were. And now you're on a major drug that's very expensive. And there are some cases where men need it. Abraham Morgentaler, Dr. Abraham Morgentaler out of Harvard, called me a few years ago. He said, I've just completed a study I think you'd find interesting. And I found it interesting that he's calling me, but this happens to me now all the time.
Well, you're out there talking about this, you've written about it, you've spoken about it for a really long time.
Yeah, and I have actually a louder voice than him or any of them.
Yeah, you have the platform.
Through me, so it's kind of a perfect, it all works perfectly. He said, I've conducted a study on men who come in with elevated PSAs and men who come in with prostate cancer. He said, in every single case where I've given them testosterone in the increments that they need, the prostate's gone back to normal and the PSA has gone down. He said the prostate's like a woman's breast, and in our ducts, in your ducts, I don't have a prostate, in your ducts is where testosterone makes food for the sperm. Okay. Okay, so when all is well, it's nice and tight and small, right? When you start aging or you're affected by stress or toxicity, you know, being exposed to a lot of chemicals, you lose testosterone and your prostate starts to enlarge,
bigger and bigger,
looking for its essential building block, which is testosterone. And it's a simple concept, but this is what Abe Morgentaler, I said that took a lot of courage to go out there and say testosterone puts it back together again. But I had also heard this from European doctors that they've been doing that. Wouldn't you rather, if you had an elevated PSA, just take some testosterone, which you're going to feel better, your muscles are going to respond better to workouts, you're going to be hornier, and you don't have to lose your prostate. So I just think that that's really cool information. And because I have my books vetted by the Life Extension Scientific Advisory Board, 26 doctors, scientists, and professionals, they had Abe put in all the background studies for that to make sure that no one was led astray. So I've never been challenged. There's research for everything that's in this book. I'm really proud of the information in this book, and I think for someone your age, going forward, you have a real shot at health because you're aware right now.
Well, that's the thing, there's so much information now. Like, I imagine when you're 19, you become a mother at that age. Like, that's a huge deal. Like, there wasn't this information then. I have the access to all this. It's a totally different life situation now.
But you have access because you're interested. You've looked into it. Most people go to the doctor like children, and whatever the doctor says, they do and take. And I understand that most people are most comfortable going allopathic. It's what we've grown up with, and it's what... It's not radical, it feels safe, nobody ridicules you because you're doing standard of care. And allopathic is, here's the problem, doctor, and here's the drug for that problem. But I think, and what I've been writing about is we kind of hit the wall. I would rather, I don't eschew that. I think Western medicine has a place, and we do surgery better than...
And it certainly works for people.
Totally, and I just had surgery, and it worked, and it works. But I would first rather go natural. Let me try it natural first. Let me try it without any drugs. If that doesn't work, I can always go over here. Harder to go drug first, then natural. And in the cancer world, I hear that from cancer doctors who are alternative cancer doctors all the time, that, you know, they come to me with last gasp where their body's just ravaged by chemicals, and then they expect me to perform a miracle. And so I always say to people, if you're comfortable waiting, because cancer in most cases is slow growing, try, if it were me, I never say try or should, if it were me, I would probably try the natural version first. And then if that didn't work, I know I'd go back to Western.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So when you were younger, say like during your Threes Companies days, like when you think about that time, what do you wish you would have known health-wise that you didn't know at that point?
I wish I would have understood the effects of stress. Even when I was Chrissy on Threes Company, I'd had cancer 3 times.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Severe, they call it severe hyperplasia in your uterus. We didn't make a big deal about it, but I never questioned where's this coming from? And then in my 30s, I got a malignant melanoma on my back. And I just thought, well, I'm Irish, and I spent too much time in the sun as a kid. And we used to brag about our sunburns and who had the biggest blisters.
Yeah.
Remember?
That's
my
insane.
brother, I go, yeah, but look at mine.
Yeah,
right?
look at how dark I am.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the stress of my childhood, being a child of an alcoholic, which I've written several books about, and hiding in a closet, I think it wasn't depression that I experienced as a kid, it was fear. And I think I encapsulated that fear, and it started coming out in the form of weakening different parts of my body. So I wish I had understood that. Maybe I would have gone to therapy sooner. Maybe I would have tried meditation or yoga sooner. So that's probably what I would have done differently.
Yeah, a couple different what ifs there, but just having your life dominated by fear, like that's an insane existence. It's not an easy thing to deal with, and if you don't have the tools at that point either, you kind of just keep it within.
And I thought it was my fault because in the birth order, you each experience a different experience. So I remember one night after a terrible night. Our nights were terrible, and I was crying, and my mother was crying, and everybody was crying, and there's a mess all over the floor everywhere. He threw things, and my brother Dan, trying to make me feel better, he said, you know, before you were born, it wasn't always like this. We had parties, we had friends over. You know what I heard. You mean my birth did this? If I wasn't here, this wouldn't be happening.
Right,
that was my dark
blame.
secret. So I walked around feeling I did this. I was, you know, a born Catholic. There's that original sin. So my original sin was like this.
Yeah, even bigger.
Yeah, right. I have the biggest original sin. I win.
Do you ever wonder what your career would have looked like with social media, like when you were Chrissy, or you're doing the Thigh Master thing? Like, do you ever imagine what it would have been?
Well, I do. Yes, it would have its advantages, but would it? Because I was on television at a golden time. There were only 3 choices: NBC, ABC, and CBS. And I happened to be on ABC on the #1 show in the country, on the hottest night of the week, with of the highest demographics of all women in television. So the focus was all on that #1 thing. Maybe social media would have diffused it, and there would have been a lot of haters. This way, there was kind of a collective consciousness that people just wanted to protect Chrissy Snow.
Yeah, they certainly did.
And I thought about, you know, creating her was actually intellectual to create that dumb blonde.
Yeah, absolutely. People just think you just stumble right into it. It's not like that. You really have to put a lot of effort into playing that character.
How do I make her likable and lovable? Dumb blondes aren't. They're annoying. And so I gave her a moral code. I imagined the scenario being the childhood I would have liked to have had. Jack and Janet were the parents, and everybody was looking out for Chrissy and worried what time she came home. And she had outrage at anybody who, you know, would not tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so the audience started laughing before she even said it, and that's when I knew that she got under their skin. Yeah. It's like you laughed at Archie Bunker just with the body language before he said it. Same thing with Gene Stapleton before they said it. I think they're the 2 greatest sitcom stars ever.
And obviously that part's been huge for you. When do you feel like you were able to transition in being just Suzanne? Like, Chrissy's a big part of your life, but you're Suzanne who's speaking, writing, like not just this character on television. When do you elevate outside of that?
Well, see, every negative has within it opportunities. Getting fired from Three's Company for having the audacity to ask to be paid commensurate with the men. They were making 10 to 15 times more, and John was making so much more than me. And they had designated John the star.
Sure.
As my star rose and started competing with John's star, instead of the producers thinking, whoopee, we got a bonanza here, like they did with the Fonz, because the Fonz wasn't supposed to be the star.
He wasn't supposed to be the guy.
No.
Yeah.
And they embraced him and paid him commensurately. It made them mad at me that I got so much extracurricular, that I was on every magazine cover and John wasn't, that I was on the cover of, well, we all were on the cover of Newsweek. But on the cover of Newsweek, that was like a fiasco that day. The producers did not tell any of us that Newsweek wanted to feature Chrissy. And nobody told me either. They just said they wanted me to wear one of my little nightgowns, my little teddy nightgown with the ruffled underpants. And so we go down and we're doing the shoot, and the photographer keeps moving me to the top, and I, at that time, know my place. John's the star, and I don't want to be.
Fade back a little bit.
I don't want to be. And Joyce is the one with all the training, and I'm not. But they kept putting me up here, and like it was really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable.
Well, it's such a different time in the industry too.
Yeah.
I mean, women are still fighting to get paid equally, but the fact that this continues to go on is ridiculous. And especially at that point where you were on the show, you were contributing in such a big way.
Well, you would think from a business perspective,
it would make sense. Let's blow this thing out.
This is money for all of us, you know. We thought he was going to be the only one breaking out, but we got this other one breaking out, and the chemistry. Clearly, they knew that because the writing started to be geared to be about the chemistry between John Ritter and Chrissy Snow, and then it would make Joyce mad because she had all the training, and I stupidly, but it's my nature to just bleh, and I said I've never had an acting class.
Oh wow!
Yeah, on day one.
That ruffled some feathers?
No kidding, no kidding. I said, really, the only thing I've ever done, I had the lead in Guys and Dolls in high school. But what I didn't tell them was, I was so good as Adelaide. I am Adelaide. That Walter Winchell, and you probably don't know who he is.
I don't know.
Walter Winchell in the 40s was like the guy on the radio.
Okay.
If Larry King, bigger than Larry King, because it started with like a
Howard Stern of the 40s, like something like that.
Yeah, like a ticker tape kind of sound. And this is Walter Winchell, and he wore a pork pie hat and a trench coat. How Damon Runyon, who wrote Guys and Dolls, based one of the characters on Walter Winchell.
Wow.
So how did Walter Winchell hear about this little high school musical? But he did, and he came to closing night, and he walks up on stage at the end of the show and comes right up to me and he says, "You're going someplace, sister."
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah, and I was kind of shocked, and then that's how I got my scholarship to college, but then I only lasted a month in college because I was going to have a baby. My granddaughter said to me the other day, "Wait, you mean you lost your virginity and had sex for the first time and you got and got pregnant at the same time?" I said, "Yep, my first time, if it even was my first time, I got pregnant. Wasn't I surprised?"
But that was happening to women back then.
Yeah, it was happening because we didn't know anything about anything, and it was called you had to get married.
Right.
And then if you had to get married, you were the one everybody's ashamed of, and you get sent away. So you can see the wounding on top of wounding. So you can see when I walk into Three's Company, I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. I'm here. I said because what they couldn't understand about me is I learn so fast. When I see good or great, I get it right away. My mother used to say, "Why is it any store we walk into, you zero in on the most expensive thing?" And I said, I see what's good. I know what's good. And when I walked in and I saw John Ritter, and I thought, oh wow, I'm going to learn from you. So anyway, getting fired was so important.
Yeah, what did you learn from that?
What's done is done. What did I have as a result of being on the show all that time? I didn't have the job anymore. I didn't have the money anymore, but everybody knew my name in this country.
You had brand recognition at that point. Yeah.
And in many parts of the world, people knew my name. That was valuable. So Alan went to Vegas and made a 2-year deal for me at the MGM Grand. And man, did I love that. What
was the wildest part of that time in your life?
Well, just headlining in Vegas. And, you know, Sunday night, if Sinatra was in town, he invited all the headliners to his dressing room.
Oh my gosh.
Sitting in the dressing room with Sinatra and Sammy and Rodney and Shirley and George Carlin, and I was the kid.
Oh, who's who at that point? Because how old were you when you were
I was in my 20s, and
wow.
Sinatra one night says to me, "You know, kid, you got a good sound." And I said, "Thanks." He said, "You're not breathing," no G, "you're not breathing right." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You sing like those singing teachers teach you." He said, "You got to sing from your peep." I said, "What's your peep?" And he said, "Your peep, your peep."
That's amazing.
So I started singing from my peep, and I can proudly say I have a singing peep now. It's about taking the breath deeper.
Just fully in there.
Forget about the diaphragm.
Yeah, you got to dig a little deeper there.
And when you dig deep, it comes so deep that you almost sing out of your third eye there, and you become a better singer. So what an opportunity. But doing nightclubs what am I going to do during the day?
Right.
You know, in the beginning, there were no laptops or iPhones or anything, and that's when I started writing books.
Yeah, and you hadn't gone to school?
No.
So you had to figure it out on your own?
I've been described as autodidactic, and I had to look up to see what autodidactic is, and I am. Because, and they say a lot of contributions have been made by autodidactics, people who are not necessarily educated, but who become passionate in a narrow focus. And that's what's happened to me. Getting cancer helped me with this. All the negatives of my life helped me to focus in on how I could be in charge of the health of my body, and then as they started talking about life extension, how do I apply quality of life to this life extension?
Right.
So there are two things I'm proud of. Really starting the adult children of alcoholics movement, because that needed to happen.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
All of us children who didn't drink alcoholically, everything's about the weakest link, which is the alcoholic. Everybody's trying to get the alcoholic better, and over here you're going, I'm a little wounded over here. I was the one, you know, scared out of my brains.
We need some time here to talk
in the
about
closet.
some stuff.
Yeah. And when I started lecturing about that, they were coming, you know, 1,000 people coming to a lecture was not unusual at all. So I was proud of that, and we kind of milked that. And I remember I was on one show, was it Geraldo, or somebody said, you've talked about this enough. And I thought, really, am I like getting repetitive here? But then I lost my hormones, and nobody ever talked about that either.
Yeah, got to put it out there.
Yeah, my mother went through something that we whispered called, I think she's going through that change. And that was this terrible, shameful thing.
Didn't even have a name.
Yeah, the change. And the women were going through the change, and we didn't even want to make eye contact with the women going through the change. And so the body has a language, which I talk about a lot in this book, and the body itches and bitches and sweats and all these unpleasant kind of symptoms that are all symptoms of hormonal imbalance. And getting cancer is where I really learned, wow, I've been making lots of estrogen. That's why I had big boobs and, you know, that curvy figure. That's the estrogen figure. But I wasn't making enough progesterone, the anti-carcinogenic component, so the balance is off. My brain goes, well, this one can't make a baby anymore. Let's get rid of this one and make room for the healthy, young, reproductive ones. And now knowing that, like I was just talking to a girl who just had her second baby, and she has no sex drive at all, and she's exhausted, and she's weeping all the time. And I said, if it were me, I would have my progesterone levels checked, because often after you have your second baby, nerves get cut, and the progesterone-making machinery doesn't rev up. And I said, I'm just saying, to have that imbalance is dangerous, and I think that's why I got cancer. So maybe she'll take my, it wasn't advice, maybe she'll go, maybe I should do that. Very tricky not to give advice.
No, I hear you.
Because I could
and you don't want to be preachy also.
Yeah,
I understand that.
And I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but
this is just your experience and what's worked for you.
And when you write 27 books, you do learn a lot.
You spend some time in the material.
Yeah, I have.
That's for sure.
I have.
Well, you think about athletes, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their bodies each year. Like, you have to invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
It's an important thing.
Absolutely. One of the things that each doctor had something interesting. Like the Belgian doctor, Dr. Terry Hertog, I'm sending a lot of ambassadors to him right now. He must wonder why all the U.S. ambassadors in Europe are coming to him. But I had been in Jerusalem 2 months ago with a delegation of 12 ambassadors. And like one of them, I could see all his issues were hormonal, and this one just didn't have a clue how to take care of himself this new way. So I've been sending ambassadors. But one of the things the Belgian doctor does, besides understanding thyroid, that's why I said about you, know why I know why you have a great thyroid? You have great eyebrows.
That's what you told me off camera.
Yeah, exactly.
I appreciate it.
People who are thyroid deficient are missing the outer third of their eyebrow. Now you'll start noticing it.
Now I'll just be looking at my eyebrows the whole time.
You'll be looking at everybody's eyebrows. So you may not have hair, but you have good thyroid.
I got good eyebrows, guys. See, this is what I got going on here.
But he taught me about something I'd never heard about, targeted peptide treatment. Now, we women know about peptides for skin, serum, and things like that, and it's good for that organ. But you can target any organ or gland with targeted, that you just want to work on your thyroid, you just want to work on your heart muscle, you just want to work on your brain, you just want to work on your sex drive. What is it that's not operating at max for you? And then you can, targeted peptides are made at a compounding pharmacy, not a drug. It's just putting back what your body's not making in that specific area. So for sex, there's a shot. And it's called PT, peptide.
And you've taken it?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Peptide 141. It works on the part of the brain that stimulates your sex desire. Because I am so hormonally balanced, really, I would say probably perfectly hormonally balanced, taking this sex peptide shot is actually too much for me.
Yeah, I would imagine it would throw things for a loop there.
Yeah, it's like you could have like 8 orgasms in a couple of hours.
Wow.
I know your eyebrows are going, wow, that's cool. But they're almost not fulfilling. It's almost like,
You're not fully tapping into it, is what
no,
you're saying.
it's like, I don't know what that means, but I was said, Alan, I'm not liking it very much. You know, I just want
You just want to let it out.
But for women and men, but I'm talking about women because when they lose their hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, those are your sex hormones. They can't feel sex anymore. It's not that they are not in the mood, they don't have the drive, they can't feel it.
Right.
And when you can't feel it, you don't want to do it. And so for women who are experiencing this and have not had the luxury of balancing their hormones the way I have, although I hope everybody has access to that, they can benefit greatly from this shot. Maybe once a week, maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months, just to rev start things, because it's just, you know,
Yeah, you need that little mental
fine-tuning the brain. Yeah,
fine-tune
right,
there. Yeah.
right.
Well, Suzanne, really nice to meet you.
We end on sex.
Yeah, we end on sex. It starts with sex, ends with sex. This book is great. Check it out.
Thank
New Way
you.
to Age. It's out now. For Suzanne, I'm DJ.
Thank
See you next time here on
Thanks.
Sit Down.